Which camera should I buy? That's a loaded question, and that's the question that I get asked more than any other question when it comes to video production. Hopefully, I'll be able to help you make some decisions today as we take an overview of some basic cameras. Hey, how you doing? I'm Matt Anderson. Today we're going to look at some basic cameras that all have different functionality, different levels of quality, but these are all cameras that I've used in the past, continue to use to this very day, but I use them for different reasons. Now, a couple of these cameras here can shoot still photographs and shoot very good still photographs, but we're just going to talk about just an overview of what these video cameras can do. We'll get more into depth in some other videos when it starts talking about some of the photographic capabilities, some of the lens capabilities, and of course, audio is always an issue and some of the other peripherals that you'll need to be able to do really good online video. But I want to go ahead and just look at a couple different things here. And there's some basic questions you need to ask yourself first and foremost before you even get started, before you start talking about the cost, reliability, any other questions. There's some basic questions you need to ask yourself. First off, where am I going to be filming? Is it doing dance? Is it sports? Is it a preacher? Is it a cooking show? What am I filming? What is the environment like that I'm going to film? Secondly, how long should the camera that I get be able to record? There are a lot of different variables when it comes to recording time in terms of the SD card or the recording media that we're going to record on. How long can the camera record without overheating? Third question you need to ask yourself is, how much money do I have to spend on a camera? There are various components when it comes to buying a camera and things that you need to consider. Do I want to spend $50,000? Do I want to spend $200? So you need to consider what it is. And there are all different kind of factors that go into deciding based on cost. And you usually get what you pay for. So first off, let's look at this Canon 5D. The Canon 5D line of cameras has been an awesome line of cameras for so many years. Canon is known for its color science. The color out of these cameras is beautiful. Now this camera, again, like I said, it takes still photographs, but its video is also awesome, but it only shoots in HD video. Now I've had this camera for 6 or 7 years at least, and I've always liked it. I never wanted to get rid of it. I said, I'm gonna hold on to this thing till the brakes fall off. I mean, this thing is a really, really, really nice camera. It's a little heavy, especially with some of the newer cameras right now. But one of the things I really like about it is that the image quality is beautiful. The skin tone reproduction is beautiful, especially on darker skin tones. But a couple things you need to consider. It's a little bit heavier. It only records up to 29 minutes. It only records up to 29 minutes. So that's something you need to take in consideration if you're recording something long, like a sports game or a dance recital or a sermon, something that's going to be more than 29 minutes. You need to consider that. And it does not have a flip out screen on the back. The screen on the back is a fixed screen. So that is something to consider if you're going to be trying to do videos where you want to see yourself, you want to put the camera up to yourself, and you want to fold out the screen so you can look at yourself. Now, there are newer versions of the camera, the Canon 70D, Canon 80D, and the Canon 90D all have flip out screens. Now they have a smaller sensor size, so it's not going to be able to get you as shallow depth of field or the low light capabilities aren't quite as good, but they are still also great cameras. But again, this is just an overview of the types of cameras that are available for you to consider when you're shooting video. Secondly, another camera that shoots stills as well as videos is Sony's A6400. The Sony A6400 really does a great job. I got the kit lens on here. This lens comes with it. Now this lens is detachable. It comes off so you can replace the lens with a different lens, different size of lens. And that's one thing I kind of like about this camera as well. It's much lighter weight than this Canon 5D. It's probably half the weight of this camera. The Canon 5D, of course, has a interchangeable lens as well. So that's something also consider when you're making your camera selection. Now this Sony A6400, this camera shoots in 4K as well as HD. So that's something that's really a great function and feature. However, you also need to consider if you're going to be deciding, hey, I'm going to be filming in 4K, which allows me a deeper or sharper resolution. but it's going to be a lot more taxing on how much card space you use on your recording medium. Also, it's going to be a much more taxing when it comes time to edit. The codec of the image that's being recorded onto the card, without getting too scientific, is really going to be very taxed. You're going to need a very, very fast computer and a lot of storage space for your computer hard drives. So that's something else to consider. Do I really need 4K for online? In my view, no, not really. Next is one of this particular format or style of camera. As you can see, is really just one of these palm-based cameras. It's really, you look like a tourist walking around with something like this, or you're going to be at the soccer game or the football game, and if you're going to be recording something for a very long period of time, this is really something that would do well for you. This is the Sony A63, and it's like a 1.25, I believe, sensor size, which is a much smaller sensor size than the Sony A6400 or the Canon 5D. But it's got a really cool feature with this camera. Now, if you're doing a lot of action, if there's dance and you're going to be following dancers or somehow there's a lot of movement that you're going to be doing, it's a very stable image, a very, very stable image. And the science inside this thing, the way this thing is constructed, it's almost like a gimbal on the inside of this camera. It's very, very kind of a cool science behind this thing here. So that's one of the reasons I got it. And it's a very, very lightweight camera. Next up is the Sony X70, the Sony X70. Now this camera here is a few years old and it shoots in HD, as does this one, HD as well as 4K. So this is 4K and HD, 4K and HD, HD only, HD only. However, if you buy the software firmware update for this X70, this camera will allow you to shoot in 4K, and I've done that. I've actually installed the software, so this camera actually shoots 4K as well. So this is really cool, a little bit more professional type in camera. Now it's got, more professional connections here to be able to connect XLR microphones into. And again, I told you I'm not going to get too far into audio on this. Is really just the overview of the video functionality of these 4 types of cameras. I just wanted to give you a rough idea of how to get started with some of these cameras here. And I've used all of these cameras and still do for different reasons and different environments. Sometimes when I want to kind of go into an environment and look like I'm just a tourist, but I'm able to get some really good images, I take this one or this one. But again, this, the Canon takes some beautiful images when it comes to, darker skin tones. But it's a much heavier camera. So you got to consider, how long do I want to carry this big old camera? So as I look at these 4 cameras here, they all have different form factors, different prices, different functionality, but they all take really good images. But they all, for one reason or another, are some of my favorite cameras, and they all have different reasons for doing just that, because there's different functionality of each. So you need to ask yourself, why am I going to use this camera? Where am I going to use this camera? And how much do I have to spend? So we're going to look deeper into not only these types of cameras, but other cameras, and also some other video production tools and tips and techniques that you're going to need to really get to start producing some really good video online. I'm Matt Anderson. Thank you so much for joining me.